Dear Jesus, thank you once again for being with us through this week. Thank you for your safety and protection. Help things to be said in a way that you would be pleased with today. Help us to each one possibly get some ideas that will help us in our life, or certainly let us relate to life, possibly in a more thankful way. Amen. The first text that we already had looked up in 1 Chronicles is talking about Thanksgiving. And a lot of times we have things go on in our life that may not necessarily be the best, and yet there's numerous situations and things that we can be thankful about. And so the talk today is about thankfulness, but also there's a few elements dealing with compassion as well we'll be talking about. And we'll be exercising our fingers a little bit with some Bible texts initially. Let's go right back to the scripture for this morning, and that was the 1 Chronicles 16:34. And I realize there's a variety of Bible versions, but it is fun to even compare Bible versions to see what the variation is in the wordage, the words that are being used. Sometimes you can have different words that ultimately mean the same thing, but are easier to understand as well. But it's fun. But let's just read that one once again in 1 Chronicles 16:34. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Jesus' mercy started before our world was created, and it goes on to this day. And I know that sometimes we can think that we have arrived and we are number one type of thing, but there's other times we can think that, well, maybe we're not as big as we might think we are. For instance, not too long ago, a few weeks back, I had to get a new camera for some of the reports I deal with. And this particular camera has the ability to actually zoom quite a bit. High zoom capability. So I've been experimenting a little bit the last few weeks at various times, including during this last few days, taking pictures of the moon. One time, a few weeks ago, I was going to my office, and wait a second, this is like 7:15 in the morning, and I looked, and I had an awesome view of the moon, looking up to the western part of the mountains from the place I was at in Wenatchee. And I couldn't actually see the moon at that point at my house, because my house was closer to the hillside. And so I stopped my cars, and I says, well, I'm going to just experiment here. And I zoomed in as much as I could, just about. And this particular camera I had seemed to have quite a bit of a good way of auto-focusing on things. And I took a look at the pictures later on my computer, and they're pretty phenomenal. You can see all these indentions on the moon, and a little waving as you're going to have some movement. I was hand-holding this camera, but even still, it was pretty fascinating. And I took some videos of the moon as well. And I have never had a camera in the past that could zoom that close and make the picture appear to be, or the moon appear to be that close. And so I have had fun taking some videos as well as still pictures of the moon over the last few days, including just a couple days ago when there was all this publicity about moon pictures and happenings with the moon. But I'm just thinking when I'm even taking those pictures of the moon that the moon is not where the light is coming from. The moon is reflecting the sun. And as we're talking about kindness text a little later on this morning, we are to be reflecting Jesus. And that's where some of these kindness aspects and texts come about in the Bible. We are not the source of the kindness, but we can demonstrate some of the kindness that Jesus gives us in our own lives. That brings me to the second text. Let's go to 1 Chronicles 16:35, one verse down from our scripture. And it says, and say ye, save us, O God, of our salvation, and gather us together, and deliver us from the heathen, that we may give thanks to the holy name, and glory in his praise, or in thy praise. The Bible is filled with areas and quotations and sections that talk about thanksgiving and praise. Another one let's go to is Ezra 3, verse 11. This is one I'm going to read on a little different version here. And it's talking about with praise and thanksgiving they sang to the Lord. He is good. His love towards Israel endures forever. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. And talking about foundations, I know that when our church had its foundation put in April of last year, that was a big process just getting to that step. Whether it was dealing with permits before we could purchase our land for being able to build a church, or all the fundraising and hard-earned money donated by many people just to purchase a property, and then all the hoops to get to where we could put a foundation in. And there was all kinds of preparation done on the ground even before the foundation was put in, with the dirt, and then we kept having it rain and snow and other things like that. But in this particular text, these people were praising because the foundation of the Lord was laid, and that is something that's big, and they were expressing extreme thanksgiving. Let's go to Psalms 7:17 for another one. Psalm 7:17. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. As we know, David had numerous sections in Psalms writing about praises to God and thanksgiving to God. And when we're thinking, it's not limited to David. We can enjoy those same praises and recognize those praises in our own lives as well. Let's go forward in Psalms to another one. Psalms 69:30. A few chapters to the right. Psalms 69 verse 30. And I will praise the name of the Lord with a song, and will magnify him with thanksgiving. David had a lot of wonderful things happen. He also had some very bad things happen in his life. But even by thinking about David, gives each one of us encouragement. Because while he was having a very good reputation overall for following God, he did some pretty nasty, bad things in his life as well. And so for each one of us, when we think of David and all the compliments that God has given about David, it should also give us courage. It is also true that there were some bad things some other people did in the Bible. The Bible talks about that they were considered the favorite people of God, and these people had done some pretty bad things, but they also overall had chosen to follow God, and that was something to be very thankful for. Let's go to another text, also in Psalms 95, verse 2. A little bit more to the right. It says, let us come before his presence with thanksgiving, and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. I can just picture a lot of these situations where people were singing and rejoicing. Kind of reminded me of a few years back, quite a few years back. I was over traveling with one of my younger brothers, and my brother was going to Newbold College in England at the time, and he wanted me to come over and visit him, and he was going to get train passes. And he got some train passes. I flew over to London, met him, and we took the ferry across to, I guess it was Calais, it's France. And we went up into Denmark, and we were going to visit some friends in Norway. More specifically, he had a girlfriend he wanted to visit in the west coast of Norway at the time. We got up there, we went to an Adventist church in, I guess it was Stavanger, Norway, just north of Bryne on the west coast. And I remember at the church potluck, I saw something I hadn't seen a lot. The adults visited, sitting down, and the children, all the young people did the dishes and cleaned up everything. And the young people that were not actually doing the dishes played musical instruments or were singing songs for all the people that were actually washing dishes and cleaning the tables. So I thought that was interesting. And the same Sabbath I was visiting there with my brother Brian, this youth group that was at this church we visited that particular Sabbath went out and they were singing songs on the street corners of Stavanger singing praise songs about Jesus. That's just something, when I see some of these texts in the Psalms, I think of that experience, which was quite fun and exciting. Let's move a little bit more to the right in the book of Psalms to Psalms 100, verse 4. It says, "Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name." David was just flowing with praises of thanksgiving. And we can just see that. You can just imagine him sitting outside somewhere just thinking, okay, I can think about God. And in some respects, I can identify with that from some backpacking trips some years ago. I remember when I was in high school, I went to high school a few different places because I've lived in many places, about 20, I don't know, almost 30 in my life, but 9 of them out of country. But this particular situation was I was in Walla Walla, College Place area, and some of our friends, we used to go hiking in the Wallowas in northeastern Oregon, and up Hurricane Creek area specifically. And sometimes on our weekend hikes, which we frequently went Friday through Sunday on our hikes, we would sometimes get up early in the morning on Saturday, maybe 5:30 or 6. And in the summertime, you can have light early. And every now and then, we'd go out and sit up on top of a nearby hillside from where we were camped. And it'd be silent. Except for every now and then, you maybe hear a jet flying over. And I can kind of think that might be what David's situation might have been like a few times when he was out herding sheep. Had peace and quiet. Every now and then you hear an animal making a noise. Or in this case, when I was sitting on top of these mountains or up in Wallowas, we were probably, I don't know, I think the highest peak where we were at was about 9,500 feet. But the places that we would sometimes go before breakfast Saturday morning was probably not that high, probably only about 6,000 or 7,000 foot. But sometimes just sitting up on a mountain by yourself, you can think clearly. And when I'm thinking of some of these situations where David is writing some of these Psalms, I think of some of that. Let's go to another book, 1 Corinthians 1, verse 4. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. And I know some of the books can kind of hide in the Bible, but I won't give you a page number since it may not necessarily match what you have. But 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. "I thank my God always on your behalf for the grace of God which is given to you by Jesus Christ." And in this case, you're thanking God on the behalf of somebody else, for example. And there's a lot of situations in life where we can thank God for what He's done for somebody else we know. Maybe it's somebody in our family. Maybe it's somebody in our church. Maybe it's somebody in our town or somebody that we're acquainted with. And there's a lot of powerful thoughts when you're talking about thanking God for what He's done for our family or our friends or somebody we know. Let's go to another part of 1 Corinthians, a few chapters to the right. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 16. A few pages to the right. Chapter 10 and verse 16. And it's still in 1 Corinthians. Basically, it's talking about communion. And it says, "Is not the cup of thanksgiving which we give thanks a participation in the blood of Christ?" And so when we think of this scenario, we can be thankful to what Jesus has done for us in dying on the cross for us and giving us future opportunities to get out of a lot of the earthly experiences, everything to do with this earth. Let's move a little bit more to the right, 2 Corinthians 4:15. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 15. "For all things are for your sakes, that the abundant grace might, through the thanksgiving of many, redound to the glory of God." And then let's move to the right one more chapter, or actually 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 11. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 11. Being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to God. And this isn't the type of enrichment like when I worked at Rhodes Bakery some years ago. When I worked in a bakery, we had a few different types of bread I made. I was going to a school called Jumpstead Academy at this time, and this is back in the mid-70s. And one of the years, actually a couple of the years I was going to school, I also worked in this bakery called Rhodes Bakery. And the second year I worked in the bakery, I was a mixer. And I had 3 different mixers to keep stocked full of dough. And I had my big one, I could put 500 to 600 pound batches of bread in that. And the small mixers, I don't know how many we did, but they were probably 40 or 30 quart mixing bowls and stuff like that. I make hot dog buns, hamburger buns, and other things like that. And I knew the ingredients I put into all these different things, and somebody else in there made French donuts and made butter horns and other things. But some of the bread that I dealt with was called enriched balloon bread. And I could take a whole loaf of that kind of bread and probably step on it and smash it and put it in my back pocket. It was truly balloon bread. And enriched, it had these additional things thrown in there. And the Bible, when it talks about enriching, is not this type of enriching where you're taking 20 things out of the bread, out of the dough, for example, or the wheat, and putting 2 back. When the Bible talks about enrichment, it is increasing and enhancing without taking away first. So I always think about the bakery situations when I hear these words enriched, or I see the boxes in the store. This is enriched. Yeah, we took out 25 good things and we gave you 2 back. Now we call it enriched. But when the Bible talks about enriching our life, it actually makes it better. It doesn't steal 20 and give you 2 back. It's a big thing for me. And even I know that sometimes you have to use chemicals when you're cooking, especially if you have to have them on the shelf. We had to use rot and mold inhibitors and other things because they just had to keep the bread preserved on the shelf for more than 2 or 3 days. I know that. But in terms of the Bible, when it talks about enhancing the value and enriching it, it's for a good purpose. Amen. Let's go to another text, Ephesians 5, verse 4. Ephesians 5, verse 4. It says, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Basically, it's talking about, here's another edition that says, nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. We can while away our time on all kinds of critical things, but it would probably be better for us, according to the Bible, and it not just be probably, it would be better for us to emphasize thanksgiving rather than bickering and moaning about everything, of which there's no end to that anyhow. Another one is Philippians 4, verse 6. Actually, I might just read the versions I've got right here. The Philippians 4, verse 6 basically is talking about, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. When you make a request to God, you certainly, according to the various scriptures that are available, you want to make sure that your mind and your attitude are right before making your request. But also, if you're asking for something that is already contradictory to God's will, as very vividly made in other parts of the scriptures, you probably are not asking for the right thing at that point either. Let's move also to another text, 1 Thessalonians 5:18. It's basically saying, give thanks in all circumstance, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. no matter our circumstances in life, we want to be thankful because things can be worse. And it brings me to my next section. And I was wanting to get some quotations of some different people's thoughts in relationship to Thanksgiving. And so I've got a few thoughts to share that are not my own. They are from some other people's perspectives. And yet I think that we can be benefited by just listening to a few of them. One of them is feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Another one is, if you count all your assets, you always show a profit. Enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. And again, these are not my words. These are other people's words that are quoted here. Reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has plenty, not on your past misfortunes, of which all men have some. And that was actually Charles Dickens. Another one is, if a fellow isn't thankful for what he's got, he isn't likely to be thankful for what he's going to get. Another one, gratitude turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion into clarity. It makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Another one, the way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. That was actually by an investment party called Charles Schwab. Another one, he is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Another one, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Another one. The deepest craving of human nature is the need to be appreciated. And another one. Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you'll never have enough. And that one's by somebody we might know called Oprah Winfrey. Another one. Silent gratitude isn't very much to anyone. That's true. And a couple more. You cannot do a kindness too soon because you never know how soon it will be too late. That's one time you hear about a lot of times, well, I wish I would have said this, I wish I would have said that, or I would say hello even. Whoops, the person died. Could be a parent, could be a kid, a child of ours, could be just a friend, somebody we met. If we think about doing something kind to somebody or saying hello, we probably better do it because we may not have the opportunity again. Another one, it is impossible to feel grateful and depressed in the same moment. Things turn out best for people who make the best of the way things turn out. It's another one. No one who achieves success does so without the help of others. The wise and the confident acknowledge this help with gratitude. Another one. In ordinary life, we hardly realize that we receive a great deal more than we give, and that it is only with gratitude that life becomes rich. And that's by somebody we may have heard about in some books or movies called Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Another one. Only people with whom you should try to get even are those who have helped you. A couple more. Keep your eyes open and try to catch people in your company doing something right and then praise them for it. Another one. In life, one has a choice to take one of two paths, to wait for some special day or to celebrate each special day. This is a wonderful day. I will never see this one, or I have never seen this one before. So we can be excited and thankful for this day that we're having. It's not the same as yesterday, and you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but you can at least express thankfulness for today. That brings me to one extra short story. Last year, I went and drove across, last summer, I drove across the country with a daughter of mine, Carolyn, and so she could have a car with her when she was getting some extra classes for her bachelor's in nursing back in Chattanooga, Tennessee area. And I was visiting with my son and daughter-in-law who were at that time living in that area. And my son likes to collect books like I do, and I've had fun collecting history books for many years and then other types of books. And there are many used bookstores I have enjoyed going to over the years. But when I was spending some time at my son's place there in, near College Hill, Tennessee, I was just perusing some of the books, and one of the books I was looking at was on Civil War stories and devotionals that were shared of people that were in leadership of different areas during the Civil War. And this particular story was a devotional book, and one of the articles was about a story that was talked about involving Abraham Lincoln. And it addresses some compassion and kind and caring factors. And so I'm going to close with this particular story, but it's called The President and Three Kittens. And the print I have, this was a book that was written quoting a bunch of stories and people from the 1860s, right around the end of the Civil War time period. But I'll read through this little story. It says, President Abraham Lincoln, sorry about that. President Abraham Lincoln's heart was tender towards the soldiers who lost their lives in the Civil War, and his heart of tenderness is related in this story. An excellent example of President Abraham Lincoln's tenderness occurred near the end of the Civil War. Abraham and his family had been invited to visit General Ulysses S. Grant's headquarters at City Point, Virginia. The trip took place in late March of 1865, about 3 weeks before the assassination. During his visit to City Point, the president happened to be in the telegraph hut on the day that Grant's army began the final advance of the Civil War. In the hut, the president came upon 3 tiny kittens. They appeared to be lost and were wandering around and meowing. Abraham picked up one of the kittens and asked, "Where is your mother?" A person standing nearby said, "The mother is dead." The president continued to pet the little kitten and said, "Then she can't grieve, as many a poor mother is grieving for a son lost in battle." Abraham picked up the other 2 kittens and now had all 3 in his lap. He stroked their fur and quietly told them, "Kittens, thank God you are cats and can't understand this terrible strife that is going on." The chief executive continued, "Poor little creatures, don't cry, you'll be taken good care of." He looked towards the Colonel Bowers of Grant's staff and said, "Colonel, I hope you will see that these poor little motherless waifs are given plenty of milk and treated kindly." Bowers promised that he would tell the cook to take good care of them. Colonel Horace Porter watched the president and recalled, he would wipe their eyes tenderly with his handkerchief, stroke their smooth coats, and listen to them purr their gratitude to him. Quite a sight it was, thought Porter, at an army headquarters upon the eve of the great military crisis, or a great military crisis in the nation's history, to see the hand which had affixed the signature to the Emancipation tenderly caressing 3 stray kittens. He was the president at the time. Abraham Lincoln was being kind to these kittens as God is to us. And so that in our lives we have many, many things to be thankful for, be them little or big, however we look at them. God sees those and recognizes our thanks to Him for the blessings that we have. And we just want to remember that every day of our life, God can bless us and does bless us, whether we recognize it or not. And even just thinking about the sparks that go on to keep our heart beating is phenomenal, and it's something to give God thanks. And that also reminds me of a situation that I was in about a week ago. I do a lot of notarization of documents in situations where people are near the end of their life or their circumstances are not very good. And I went to a hospital to notarize some documents. And I go into this hospital room, and I see the man in this bed who I'm supposed to get signatures from. Is on one leg, he's missing the leg below, just above the knee, and he has, it looks like he took a piece of shoe leather and sewed it around that part of the knee. So he's missing a leg on one side, and on the other side of his foot, just above where the ankle would be, it's cut off. And he's got something sewn over the end of that one. So one, he's got his foot missing, and the other one, he's got his whole leg missing, just from starting above the knee. And then I'm hearing the conversation go on. Oh, and he was just begging the nurse for something to drink. He says, my saliva glands stopped functioning when I had chemotherapy because of some kind of a throat cancer in the past. And he was begging for something to drink, and they said, well, we'll give you honey mixed with some water. He says, I just want some water to drink. And so he was just he was trying to battle with a nurse over the ability to drink a little bit of water as opposed to getting it in an IV. And then at that point, this man had his intellect all working. His wife says, well, I don't know if you've noticed this, but our son was murdered just a few weeks ago. You probably saw it in the newspapers. Their son was murdered in Omak a few weeks ago, and by their daughter-in-law. And then she died in Spokane just shortly after that. But when I was in that situation, it just kind of reminds me of a few things. There, this man was just trying to negotiate with a nurse to be able to drink some water. Are we able to drink some water? If we can, and we can swallow the water without having to have it spoon-fed to us, mixed with honey, or put in an IV, that's something to be thankful for. Can we walk? That's something to be thankful for. And it goes on and on. Are our kids alive? That's also something to be thankful for. So whether you're talking about having your kids be alive, whether it's the ability to drink some water and actually swallow it and enjoy it, or walk, those are all things to be thankful for. And just walking into that room is the situation are slapping me in the face to remind myself regularly to be thankful for everything that goes on. Because life is filled with plenty of garbage and difficult situations, but we can be having an attitude of thankfulness not only for things that we don't necessarily think about initially, but we can actively think of, can we see, can we walk, can we move, can we eat, can we actually taste the food? There's all kinds of things that we need to be recognizing, to be thankful for. And of course, the biggest thing to be thankful for is that Jesus is anxious to help us in our life and wants the best for us throughout all of our life. And we just want to remember that. Let's bow our heads for a short prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you once again for being with us through this week and guiding us and encouraging us. Please continue to do so in the coming weeks. And whether it's in the big things as we see them or the little things, God sees us in everything that we are involved with. Help us to recognize that. And we ask for you to continue to bless us and be with us through the coming weeks and days. Amen.
Amen.